Greenlight Network presents Football Time.
Hey, and welcome to the Football Time podcast with our man, Achilles Rain. We're here to break down the conference championships game in both the AFC and the NFC. It was one hell of a playoff weekend. A lot of interesting talking points here, and we got two teams left in the football season to see who will be the champion. I'm not sure one of these teams we thought would really be here. It's possible I'm still a little confused how they are still here. I'm totally not sure they were the best team in any of the three games they played. But nonetheless, they're in the Super Bowl, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Kansas City Chiefs, who rolled into the Super Bowl, and that offense looked great. We'll start out in the NFC with the with the Green Bay Packers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. A very interesting game. I'm not sure this went how people thought it would go, but it was a very entertaining game nonetheless. And what did you make of this game?
You know, to be completely honest with you, I think that this particular championship Sunday was probably not what a lot of people expected. And this goes for both games. But I think this one probably really raised some eyebrows. A lot of people were really confident with Green Bay coming into the championship game. They were playing really well. Their defense had been playing really solid defense as of late. And their offense had been obviously the best offense in the league. And they really showed it going up against the Rams the previous week. And that number one defense, they pretty much did what they wanted against that team. So I think a lot of people were kind of expecting this. If anything, I mean, it kind of was a shootout if you look at the score. It was a really close score, but I still don't think that a lot of people other than Tampa Bay fans really expected this type of outcome.
Yeah. Let's go over the box score really quick. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers won 31-26. Tom Brady was 20 of 36 for 283 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Leonard Fournette had 12 carries for 55 yards and a touchdown. Ronald Jones, 10 for 16. Godwin had 5 catches for 110. Evans, 3 for 51 and a touchdown. Scotty Miller, 2 for 36 and a touchdown. And probably the biggest touchdown and probably the reason the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won was that touchdown at the end of the half. Aaron Rodgers, 33 for 48, 346, 3 touchdowns, interceptions. Aaron Jones, 6 for 27. Jamal Williams, 7 for 23. Valdez-Scantling, 4 for 115 and a touchdown. Devontae Adams, 9 for 67 and a touchdown. Allen Lazard, 3 for 62. So let's get into this. Green Bay did not get off to their really hot start that they usually do. They got behind. Do you think that threw them off any in the first quarter, or do you just sort of push everything to that really right before halftime? They get that 4th down, and then King just lets Miller get behind him. And I don't know if I've ever seen a worse defensive back play in a professional football game. I mean, literally, you let him catch the ball anywhere you can. They had no timeouts left. He catches the ball, you tackle him half over. The only thing you can't do is let him get behind you and catch a touchdown pass. Now, I think some of that was scheme-wise. I don't know why you leave anybody on an island. But anyway, what did you make of Green Bay not getting off to their traditional hot start? Do you think it threw them off, or do you just look at that play right before half that really swung this game?
I think that really affected them. You know, we talked about it a little bit the previous week. Green Bay somehow ended up with the number one rushing offense for the previous week, which is not something that we're accustomed to seeing. We're used to seeing, you know, big passing numbers, not so much when it comes to the running numbers, but they were the best rushing team the previous week. And we thought that if they could somehow get ahead, maybe they could try to utilize that, ground and pound type of game plan. Now, it didn't turn out that way for them. And even though we expect Green Bay to, really show their teeth on offense by passing the ball, they had a lot of trouble. The offensive line was having a lot of issues with that Tampa Bay front seven. It seemed like they were getting a lot of pressure on Aaron Rodgers, and it really threw off his timing with his wide receivers. So I think getting down early on was probably, not what they were hoping for and not what they anticipated. And it really, really changed that game plan going forward.
Yeah. So what did you make of that? I guess that sequence right before the end of the half. Tampa Bay was going to punt with I think it was about 20 seconds left on fourth down. They decided to go for it. No real big deal. I will say the interception by the Tampa Bay Bucks guy was a really, really nice interception. Now, I'm sure there are plenty of Green Bay fans showing screenshots of him holding the guy's shoulder pads. That'll come up probably later in our breakdown of this game. But really nice interception. Got the ball, 3 sort of worthless plays. They get that fourth down conversion. I still don't think it's really that big a deal. They aren't necessarily in field goal range. They have no timeouts left. So what did you make of that sequence right before the half? Were you stunned that Green Bay played such a, man up coverage? Were you shocked that the cornerback, who is a professional player, let somebody get behind him on that? Just what did you make of that sequence? Because I really think that flipped the whole game. I mean, going in 14-10, you don't like it, but I think Green Bay had sort of gotten, I'd say control. I wouldn't say full control back in the game, but I think going in 14-10, 17-10 if they kick a field goal there, I think you still have confidence that Green Bay is going to win it. You then go into the half 21-10, giving up a touchdown that should have never been given up. Just what did you make of that sequence?
Yeah, I think that was probably, a backbreaker for them. And that probably kind of signified the way that second half was going to go. Like you said, if you're just down, what was the score right before that touchdown?
It was 14-10. If, they do kick, I mean, I don't want to give them the field goal because where they were, it was like a 54-yard field goal. So I don't think that's automatic in a 20-degree day in Green Bay. But, it's going to be 14-10, 17-10 going into the half.
Now, if you look at the statistics, the defense for Green Bay didn't play bad. It wasn't a horrible game by them. If anything, they played a really good game. This game basically was all about, making plays when the moment arises. And, it just seemed like Tampa Bay was able to make those plays because performance-wise, Brady threw 3 interceptions, and they didn't run the ball all that well. I mean, they ran the ball okay, but not all that well. So this game really came down to moments like that, and Green Bay just couldn't really, put a lid on that offense. Like you said, at that point, I'm okay giving up 3 points. You're still within 1 score with Green Bay's offense. You have some sort of confidence that you can actually get back in the game, especially because I believe they were receiving in the second half.
Yes, they were.
You're going down even 7 points. I think based off how you were playing on offense, I think it's kind of a win. Now, the fact that they gave up that touchdown, I think that was like I said, a big backbreaker. It was huge, and it really swung momentum. And even when that second half started again, it almost seemed like they were still suffering the after effects of that play, and they just couldn't recover from it. I just don't understand what type of play call that was where, I just don't understand how you let the guy get past you like that. And
well, I'm curious, do you blame – now, we don't know the defensive call, but, he was clearly man-to-man out there with not much help. Do you blame the defensive call there or the defensive back for clearly he must not have known the situation or something? Literally, you just can't let him get behind you. He catches that ball at the 1, you make the tackle, the half is over. It's just fake yards for Brady to pile on stats. So do you sort of split the blame? Why is he left on an island on a play where you can just sit back in a really deep zone with a bunch of, corners and safeties, or do you blame the defensive back for letting somebody get behind him in that situation when the only thing you can't do is let somebody get behind you?
I think a lot of times things like that are a little more, cutthroat as they're pretty much, you get what you get what you get. And sometimes it's the coach's fault. Sometimes it's a player's fault. I think this was one of those situations where you could probably split the blame, as a defensive back in professional football who gets paid a lot of money to stop guys from catching balls or at least stop guys from scoring. You know what your objective is. The half is about to end. Like you said, if they catch the ball and, even if they get a little bit of yak, some yards after the catch, it runs the clock. It helps you. It benefits you. All you have to do, like you said, is not get beat deep. The fact that he allowed him. Now, I don't know if he thought he had some like very deep safety help.
Well, that was the only thing I could think is maybe he thought he had some deep safety help. But once again, why are you trying to jump a route for, 5-10 yards? It's like, buddy, just don't let him get behind you.
Oh yeah, at that point, it's not even about making plays. It's not about playmaking defense. It's about playing solid defense. That's all it's about. You play solid defense, you at the very least, walk away with giving up only 3 points. Now, it was a big mistake. Again, I don't know if he thought he had safety help. I don't know what the call was. I haven't really looked at the tape. So that's one of the reasons why I think that the defensive coordinator also has to get a little bit of the blame there. I'm not a fan of the prevent defense. I hate the prevent defense. I think that it hurts teams more than it helps them in the long, for the most part. But I think this was one of those situations where you got to play prevent defense. Like you said, if you catch the ball and they start getting some yards, their best option is to try and run out of bounds. At that point, all you got to do is protect the sidelines. If they're going to catch something, let them catch it down the middle. Let them waste a little bit of clock. You go into halftime with the clock running. I mean, it seems pretty basic, football fundamentals. I don't understand what the play call was. So I think that both the defensive player and the coach deserve a little bit of blame for this. This is a championship game. This is not the type of game where you have to make these types of mistakes. That was a pretty basic type of play as far as what your job was, and they really blew it. And I think that's really one of the big reasons why they lost that game.
Well, yeah, I just I wanted to get to the play to, sort of start the second half too. It was sort of a combo package. You had that terrible play, and then like you said, Green Bay got the ball. I think it was the second or third play. Aaron Jones got that little swing pass and once again didn't protect the ball. The same play happened earlier in that first half where the safety came up and hammered him and he fumbled it. It just happened to be Robert Tonyan that was right there and was able to pick it up so they don't get the turnover. But once again, Aaron Jones, left the ball a little bit unprotected, left himself unprotected. He ended up getting hurt on the play, and the safety hammered it, fumbled the ball, and Tampa Bay essentially gets another free score. They picked up the ball on the 5 off that. And that combination of essentially you pretty much just gave a professional football team, I don't care who it is, you give the Jets 14 free points to close the half and start a half. You're going to be behind the 8 ball no matter what you are. Do you blame Aaron Jones on that play, or do you just say, you know what, the safety made a real good play there?
Well, I mean, it's easy to just put the blame on Aaron Jones, but you also got to give, props to where they're deserved. And I think that the safety definitely deserves a little bit of praise there. It was the second time that he came, into the box and really impacted the play. Like you said, this one obviously was huge because of the fumble, the turnover. And I don't know how badly, and I'm not trying to downplay an injury here, but I don't know how badly, he was actually hurt. I don't know how much of it was pride or knowing in your gut that you really just probably cost your team a really good chance at staying competitive in this game, because even though the score is what it is, this game really felt like it was over pretty early on. And I know that if you just sit here and you just look at the box score, it looks like it was a really back and forth game. But in reality, with all the mistakes Tampa Bay made, with, all the shortcomings that they had, the fact that this game was pretty much over, early on in that second half, I think was pretty telling at how bad Green Bay was playing.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you about, we'll get into the fourth down field goal kicking situation a little later, but I don't think Brady played all that well. He threw those 3 picks in the second half on 3 straight possessions. Now, how much do you, I guess I have to bring it up a little bit. How much do you blame Green Bay's coaching staff for that decision? We'll talk more in depth about it after this, but or do you blame them more? Brady threw 3 picks, and I think they only got 7 points out of that. Green Bay also went down into the 10, and I believe they got 2 field goals out of that they didn't get touchdowns on. Do you look at that more as the reason Green Bay lost the game, or do you just look at the coaching decision at the end and maybe, football, sometimes funny bounces just have their way of causing weird games like this? I don't know if I've ever seen a team like Tampa Bay, who essentially has gotten pretty good bounces 2 games in a row and essentially made the Super Bowl by it. But I'm curious on your feeling on how did Green Bay lose this game by not converting those turnovers into points, not converting, goal line situations into touchdowns instead of field goals? Or are you looking at the coaching decision at the end? We'll get on that next, but as really the reason this went, I guess, south for them.
Listen, it's really easy for us to sit back and say Green Bay lost this game. And that's the consensus around the nation, I think, right now is Green Bay. Everyone thought that they could come out and just overpower that Tampa Bay defense with that offense, like they did with the Rams, and, just not coast to a win, but get a win. And everything is so magnified, especially in the playoffs. I think that it's really a disservice to that Tampa Bay defense and that offense as well, even though they didn't play as well. I think it's a disservice to that team to not give credit to them. Yes, Green Bay made a lot of mistakes. And like I said, in the playoffs, these things are really magnified. So it's really easy for us to sit back, especially with 2 games, and kind of nitpick at every little decision that was made. But I think that, this is 2 really good teams that are really well built, just kind of going at it. And one of them was going to come out on top. Probably not the team that I thought was going to come out on top, but they came out and they played really well. They put really good defense, and that offense did enough to pull off the win. Just like in the regular season, those goal line stances are really important. We see that those teams that are really efficient when it comes to scoring touchdowns in the red zone as opposed to field goals, they're the teams that usually tend to kind of get really far, especially when it comes to the postseason. Now, Green Bay, with their really potent offense, I don't think we really expect them to be held to field goals. Aaron Rodgers had a huge season with a bunch of touchdowns, and a lot of those touchdowns came in the red zone, where technically speaking, it's a lot harder to score because there's a smaller field to protect. But we don't expect the Packers to play that type of offense, even in the red zone. We expect them to score touchdowns, not field goals. So that's definitely something to blame. But it's hard for me to really put the blame on Green Bay as opposed to praising the Tampa Bay defense who made some plays.
Yeah. All right. Good, interesting analysis. All right. We'll get to the decision here. 8-point game. I think we could look a little bit too at the receiver who dropped the 2-point conversion pass also as a bit of this, but you and me are a little bit different on how we play things wise. I think you're a little more conservative and old school style football. I'm a little more, I'd say go for it. I don't think we're both, completely, wildly one way or the other, but you probably swing a little more conservative, old school style. I swing a little more aggressive and let's go for 7 points here. But I can't honestly believe that you thought kicking that field goal there down 8 and with essentially you have to get a stop as a great decision.
Listen, first of all, for the record, I do believe in analytics a little bit.
Yes, I don't think you probably don't believe in analytics quite as much as I go by them, but I don't want to punch you as a 1960s football coach. It was, we should run the ball every time and play a 4-possession game here either. I think you're a little more modernistic, but I do think you lean a little bit more old school style, and I'm probably a little bit more new school style. We're probably just both a little offset from the middle on our ways.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I said, I do believe in analytics. Okay. It's just, to me, I feel like, especially in football, I think that analytics do play a part in it, but every single player can impact the game in so many different ways, whether they have the ball in their hands or not, that sometimes those analytics don't really play into it, at least in my opinion. Now, when it comes to that field goal kick, I understand the thought process behind going for it. You're going to need a touchdown regardless. I get all that. But you also kind of got to get a feel for momentum. At that point, Green Bay was starting to kind of claw their way back in, and to get stopped short and not get anything out of it if you wouldn't, convert on that 4th down, then I think it's really a morale killer at that point. I think it's almost kind of like players like, all right, well, we gave it a shot and we just couldn't get anything out of it. I think that going for the 3 was more of a, all right, let's keep our heads in the game. Our defense has been making a lot of plays. And at that point, I think it was also kind of foolish. That's the part that I had more of an issue with than the, field goal. I'm okay with kicking the field goal and keeping momentum going. My biggest pet peeve with that was the fact that defense, which is not known as a great defense, going up against a stacked Buccaneers offense, had already made so many plays to keep the Green Bay Packers within that game. And they were basically putting it on that defense to get us another stop, get us another shot. That defense did so much. They're not, like I said, they're not known as an elite defense. And that Tampa Bay team is stacked, especially on offense. They have so many different weapons. Even with Antonio Brown out, they just look like, didn't really matter which direction Brady wanted to look. It looks like he had a guy who was going to be open. Mike Evans, who we talked about as being a warm weather guy, made some big plays. Even though he didn't make a lot of plays, he made some big plays when he had to. So I think the fact that the coaching staff was really banking on that defense to, either get another stop or get another turnover, I think that was the biggest blow to that team's chances of winning. Not so much the kicking the points. I like getting the points, especially in a playoff game. You got to keep momentum going when you're coming back.
Yeah. The problem with it I saw was you were going to need a touchdown no matter what. Now, I get, you bring it to 5, you get the touchdown, you win the game. But no matter what you did there, you were going to have one chance to get one stop. Now, I think if there had been 4 or 5 minutes on the clock and you have the ability to maybe give them a first down, you have a little buffer there leeway-wise. I think I can understand taking that and trying to get the win. Where I lose it is essentially you were playing to get one stop in the game. And the defense had played well, but it had not played well on 3rd down. Tampa Bay kept converting 3rd downs. That's really probably a main reason they won the game, was they were able to get 3rd downs. So to bank everything on your defense getting one stop and then driving down and getting a touchdown anyway, with essentially you would have no timeouts left. It just seems like a long shot when at least you give yourself 2 chances to get said touchdown. Now, you might not get the 2-point conversion. I get all that. But at least if you go for it on 4th down, you don't get the points. You still have to get the one stop and drive down and get the touchdown. And I just, especially with, you're putting the ball in Aaron Rodgers' hands, you're putting the ball in Devontae Adams' hands to make a play. It just seems like the smarter move to trust that side of the ball than to trust the defensive side of the ball. And I mean, basically the thing was over after the first play of that series when Tampa Bay dropped back and threw a 9-yard pass. Now, the funny thing was we'd probably be having a different coaching decision if Green Bay had gotten the stop, because for some reason Bruce Arians accepted that 5-yard penalty that they took on purpose.
I don't understand. You could decline it. You have the option to decline.
Now, that gets lost in all this. I was very confused by that, and I was like, oh my God, Green Bay's going to win this game. And I don't think anybody knows that Bruce Arians just essentially gave Green Bay the ball back. It gets lost in history, and only this show will probably remind you that for some reason, Bruce Arians accepted a penalty when he essentially could have run the clock out. But that was my only thing. To trust that defense to get that one stop, and then essentially you're giving your offense the ball back 40 yards from where you are, possibly 60 yards from where you are, depending on the punt, and to drive down the length of the field again with this time with no timeouts left. It just seemed like you're on the 8, you take that chance, and you see what you get. And if you don't get, say you get the touchdown, you don't get that 2-point conversion, you still need that one stop. And this time you're at least driving down for a field goal to win the game. It seemed to put yourself in a bad position, both defensively and on the offensive side of the ball, because you're pushing yourself back to get to where you want to be, the 8-yard line there.
Now, I agree with you when it comes to it was a big mistake to trust in that defense as opposed to trusting that offense. If I've got the Green Bay Packers as my team and, I've got to put the ball in somebody's hands, I'm not going to put it on, the opposing quarterback's hands and have my defense win me the game. I'm going to put it in Aaron Rodgers' hands, and I'm going to have him win the game. He's probably the MVP of the season. You put it in his hands. I agree with you on that part. But like you said, they needed 8 points at that particular moment in the game. They had already missed on a 2-point conversion. I think this play selection really speaks a lot as to what the coach's confidence level was in the way that offense was playing. I think that the reason they kicked that field goal was, listen, we get some points now. We score a touchdown. We don't need to worry about a 2-point conversion at that point because a touchdown will win the game. You need a touchdown regardless. You need a touchdown to get to tie it, or you need a touchdown to win it. So I don't think that you're really I'm okay with the field goal. That's what I'm trying to say is I'm okay with them kicking the field goal because either way you're going to need a touchdown to either win the game or tie the game. And I just think that I'd rather bank my money, especially on the way that red zone offense was playing. I'd rather bank my money on my kicker kicking an extra point as opposed to my offense coming out and getting 2-point conversion, following a touchdown.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. A couple more talking points here on this game. The defense, forced the third down because Arians accepted that penalty and they would have gotten the ball back. Except they made that pass interference call. I don't know how much you can argue it, letter of the law. It was pass interference. He did grab his shirt. I think there should be a little bit of knowledge that Brady essentially lobbed a ball in the middle of the field to no one, not even near that receiver. But I think the bigger thing is essentially they had let him play the whole game, and Tampa Bay had been grabbing Green Bay's receivers the whole game and holding them. They never flagged that call until that one. Now, it was a pretty obvious grab. You saw the guy's shirt being pulled. It probably depends on if you're a Tampa Bay fan or a Green Bay fan. We aren't really either. What did you think of the call there? Should it have been made? Should they have just swallowed their whistles, sort of like they had been the whole game before?
Okay, so I'm more of the mindset of consistency. If you're not going to call that in the first half, if it's not a penalty in the first half, it's not a penalty in the second half. That's the way I look at it. I'm okay with letting guys play. It's the playoffs. It's a physical game. That's what the NFL is. It doesn't matter what sport it is, basketball, hockey. I don't care. If you're going to let him play, that's fine. But you got to let him play for the entire game. You can't pick and choose unless something's like super egregious, like super obvious. I don't want to deal with, the referees impacting the game in the way they did. It was a huge blow to that defense. They could have had another shot at it. And the fact
I think that was probably what that is it. Green Bay essentially got the stop there. and I don't know if they didn't really see, but Brady was essentially throwing the ball away there. So it wasn't even actually to hit. Well, I guess in theory it was to him, but
in the area.
yeah, he wasn't making that catch whether you were holding him or not. That would be my only problem, was they were letting him hold and grab all game, and then all of a sudden, because the guy had a white stretchy t-shirt under his jersey instead, and we could see it a little easier, they all of a sudden start launching flags back and forth. So I understand the call, letter of law. It was a hold, pass interference, so you got to make it. But the fact that you hadn't been flagging it all game, and Tampa Bay's corners essentially whole game plan was to hold and grab the receivers, it just seemed a little ticky-tacky.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I said, I'm more on the side of consistency. If you're going to let that one go early on, let it go later in the game. If you're going to call that early on, call it the entire game. I think the moral of the story here is wear your stretchy white t-shirts.
Yes, I think so. That's a good call. Wear your stretchy white t-shirt under your jersey.
I think I've got mine on right now. So,
all right. So last thing about this game, Tom Brady's in another Super Bowl. We're going to have to hear it for 2 weeks. We were already hearing it on Sunday for 2 more weeks. Maybe I'm just a hater, but these sort of things just drive me nuts. He's the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time. I can sort of understand it for basketball when it's 5 players on a court and 1 player affects a game so much. But these conversations for football drive me nuts, because I think maybe other than possibly soccer, there is not a sport that is more team-oriented, and everybody collectively sort of needs to be good and in on it. So to say Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback because he's made Super Bowls, a bunch, just seems weird to me when he's been on great teams a bunch. And, it drives me nuts with all this, because, why wouldn't somebody say Troy Aikman is the greatest quarterback of all time? He won 3 Super Bowls. He made 3 in 4 years, but nobody says anything because that Cowboys team was great. The defense was great. The offense was great. The line was great. I don't like the individual, this was the greatest football player of all time, because football's such a team-oriented sport. Take somebody like Jared Goff. If they make that play to Brandon Cooks in that Super Bowl 3 years ago, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I don't think today you would be saying he's a great quarterback, because I'm sure the results of his career would play out just about the same. Football's such a team game. It just drives me nuts when we have to anoint and rank all these guys. It seems very different than basketball, where, somebody like LeBron James, you put him on the court, there are 4 other people on the court. He actually affects the game. That one person affects the game. I just don't see football as one person affecting a game as much, especially when you start going down list of quarterbacks who have won Super Bowls. For God's sakes, we had a Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer and Kerry Collins playing in it for, granted, very solid quarterbacks, but I don't think anybody's putting them on the list of greatest quarterbacks ever.
Yeah, I have a little bit of an issue with that also. And it's for the same reasons. I think, like I said earlier on in this segment, I think that the NFL is probably one of those more team-oriented type of games where you need everybody to do their job in order for things to go, correctly. And you need everybody to work cohesively in order for it to be successful. Now, is Brady the greatest quarterback ever? Possibly, if you look at, accolades alone.
Well, I think you're okay saying he's one of the greatest winners ever, but like if I gave you film and I didn't give you anybody's, stats or wins or Super Bowl rings, and you were watching film of, say, Patrick Mahomes play quarterback, and you were watching film of Tom Brady play quarterback, you'd probably be like, that dude, Patrick Mahomes, is a better quarterback just on physical stuff. Now, I know that doesn't, matter either. I don't mind people saying he's one of the greatest winners ever, but Bill Russell won 11 rings. I don't think anybody is knocking down the door saying Bill Russell, while he was great, is the greatest basketball player ever. It just seems weird that Super Bowl, we put so much on Super Bowl wins, but it's such a team game. I mean, it just seems weird to rank people. I've never understood really ranking people in football because your circumstance is so important. I mean, if Brady gets drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals, we probably never even hear of him, for God's sakes.
Yeah, there's so many different things when it comes to an NFL player's career that really impact his legacy. Now, to me, Tom Brady is probably the most accomplished quarterback
That's a great
ever.
way to put it.
That's the way I look at him. He's the most accomplished quarterback. Is he good? Yes. Can he play great? Yeah, he can play great. But so can Jared Goff. So can I don't know.
Aaron
Name
Rodgers.
any player. Yeah, name any quarterback, and they can all play great at some point or another. Now, I'm not trying to take anything away from him. He's very accomplished. He's done a lot of great things. I'm sure, exploding many brains that are sitting at home wondering, how is this guy doing this at his age? I get all that. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. He's earned everything that he's gotten. But to say that he's the best player ever, there's so many different other players that I've seen that can actually impact the games on their own. So for me to sit back and say that Tom Brady is the greatest ever, I have a hard time saying that. I like I said, I'll give him his respect. I'll admit that he's, made a lot of big plays, but I also, you think about the Super Bowl against the Seahawks, where they should have run the ball with Marshawn Lynch and instead they decided to put it in Russell Wilson's hands. He won that one because of the defense, but yet he gets the credit for it. Who was it? Collins that got that pick?
Yes. I don't remember.
I'm drawing a blank here, but or was it McCourty?
It might have been McCourty.
I can't even remember who it was. The point that I'm trying to make is that and that's exactly my point. That guy is the reason they won that Super Bowl. But we're not talking about that guy as the greatest cornerback ever. We're not talking about him as the best defensive player ever, even though he's the reason that they won that Super Bowl. We're talking about Tom Brady. Why? Because he's been the consistent figure when it comes to those championships. So he's very, very well, represented when it comes to his accolades. He's definitely the greatest winner, like you said. I can't bring myself to say that he's the greatest player ever. Because, like you said, so many different things have to go well for him to have an impact on the game, as opposed to other players that can impact the game on their own. Now, not to be a homer, because listen, I'm not gonna say I hate Tom Brady, but if anyone has a reason to hate Tom Brady, it's definitely me. The guy cost my team, a possible dynasty run back when we had Kurt Warner. But I think of guys like Steven Jackson with the Rams, who that offensive line was pretty bad. They had no weapons at wide receiver to speak of. They had quarterbacks who they're pretty much just plugging in and hoping that they'd play well. Yet he was still, every team that was playing the Rams knew, all right, let's key in on Steven Jackson. Let's key in on Steven Jackson. And the man was still putting up big numbers. To me, that's more of a sign of a great player, that people can really sit here and focus entirely on you, and you can still impact the game. Now we don't really talk about it. Why? Because that team didn't win many games. Statistically, yes, they looked great, but they didn't win many games. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Tom Brady is the greatest player ever. I will say he's the most accomplished player ever.
I think that's a great point too. It's like circumstance. If you take Steven Jackson and push him back, 6 years earlier on those Rams teams, you're probably talking about the greatest running back tandem ever with him and Marshall Faulk, and you got Torrey Holt. You fast forward 6 years later, and that Rams team is decimated. Warner's gone, Bulger's beat up. You got Sam Bradford in there. You no longer have that offensive line that you had. Torrey Holt is aging. Isaac Bruce is out. It's just a lot of football is circumstance, team building, coaching. It's just, I find it hard to measure one player's impact on a football game. I mean, you take somebody like Lawrence Taylor in the mid to late 80s. How do you measure his impact on a football game when he was completely wrecking offenses? They won numerous Super Bowls. It's such a team game. I don't get the ranking of players, especially when somebody can just be put in a situation that is so awful that you literally have no chance to win. And I think a little bit like baseball. Baseball players do not get blamed for being in bad situations. I mean, everybody thinks Mike Trout is the best player right now. Mike Trout and the Angels never win baseball games because they don't have other great players. They don't have a pitching staff. They, have a couple extra hitters. But for some reason, this football debate, and it always seems to be quarterbacks, we have to rank quarterbacks, but there's so many moving parts to a football team: offensive line, defensive line, secondary play. I mean, essentially, the Green Bay Packers probably win that game if the quarterback doesn't get beat deep on that last, play before the half. And that's what turns that game. It's going to be 2 long weeks of hearing, battle of the GOAT between him and Patrick Mahomes. And I don't know, maybe I'm just bitter and don't want to hear it.
Listen, as much as I hate hearing all that talk, I think that I'll deal with it because he's earned a pass this time around, because I definitely didn't see him getting this far into the playoffs. I know I've said early on in the season and even about halfway through the season that this Tampa Bay team was really, really stacked and they were built for the playoffs. But I honestly will admit that I did not think they would get this far. So, if we have to hear for the next couple of weeks, so be it. But I do want to go on record to say that football to me is probably the most important team sport, and individual performances affect the game, but don't affect it as much as people really put it out to be.
Yeah, I think if you want to list the great teams that Tom Brady had been on, I'd be more than happy to rank those against great teams. Like I said, those Giants teams or the, Colts teams or, any of the great teams who have come around, those Cowboys teams, those Niners teams, if you want to rank teams, I think I'm more willing to go there than just start rattling off individual players.
Yeah, but I don't know if you noticed, Tom Brady posted a little video of him and Gronk. They ain't going anywhere. They ain't going nowhere.
Well, yes, Gronk was wonderful in that game. I believe he made one catch.
One catch. Yeah, I knew he would have some sort of impact. He's the greatest tight end ever. So
I think in our next game, the tight end in that game might be walking around on that block and starting to take that mantle. So we'll get into our next game. The Buffalo Bills 24, Kansas City Chiefs 38. Josh Allen 28 of 48, 287, 2 touchdowns, interception, 7 carries, 88 yards. That was all the rushing to speak of for Buffalo. Beasley 7 for 88, and a shout out to him. We found out he was playing on a broken leg for the last 3 weeks. So really, really gutty to go out there and play on that. Stephon Diggs, 6 for 77. Patrick Mahomes was just ridiculously good. 29 of 38, 325, 3 touchdowns. Darrell Williams, 13 carries, 52 yards, and a touchdown. Tyreek Hill, 9 for 172. Travis Kelce, 13 for 118, and 2 touchdowns. So we thought maybe Kansas City would go to their style of offense that they went with Buffalo in week 6. They did not. They just looked ridiculously good. They started out Kelce. Buffalo tried to adjust. Then they just torched them with Tyreek Hill, and they didn't have much answers. When Kansas City is doing things like this, can they be beat?
Short answer, no. There's no way. We've seen him beat this Bills team with one type of game plan, and then we see them utilize a completely different game plan to beat the same team. This team is really good, and I think that the biggest concern for me coming into this game was Patrick Mahomes' ankle or his foot, his toe, whatever it was.
I think it was okay.
Yeah, I think so too. and I wish I would have known how okay he was prior to kickoff, because I probably would have made different picks. Um, to me, he's one of those players that impacts the game more so than aforementioned players that we talked about. But to me, he's one of those players. He's a really good quarterback who has a huge impact on the game because of his gameplay style. I'm not going to sit here and call him the greatest quarterback ever, but he's a really important piece of that offense. And I thought that if he
We'll
was,
do these debates for our off-season shows in April, everyone.
we're going to rank every single best player from 1 to 1,000. So, but no,
Start working on your list now.
yeah, I'm using a highlighter though, so I don't know how well that's going to work.
Just print out some touchdown passing stats and sort them.
I just decided I'm just going to listen to those sports talk shows and hear what they have to say about who the greatest player ever is. I think I'm going to be shocked as to who they pick.
Well, I'm going with Y.A. Tittle. So, well,
yeah, I'm. You know what? If I had to pick a guy, I know we're getting off topic here, but if I had to pick a guy that was really impactful to me, and he was, I always remember all my guys, but he came back into memory as I was watching the game, and they had one of those fantasy football commercials. Orlando Pace, man. He's still looking good. He's still looking big, man. He looks like he can still block a few guys out there on the left side of that line.
well, I think we get a lot of hits. I have Y.A. Tittle. You have Orlando Pace.
But listen, I digress from the point. I definitely expected this game. I thought this game would go differently. Not expect. I did mention that if Mahomes was healthy, I could definitely see this game going completely the opposite way, and that's exactly what happened. Buffalo just didn't seem to have any answer for that Kansas City offense. Didn't matter who you tried to go after. They're a really dangerous team when you look at it. They've got one of the better tight ends in the league, and he's a huge target, catches a lot of balls, puts up a lot of yards, puts up really big numbers. If you decide you want to kind of, put some extra help down the middle and watch him, you got the speed, or you got the cheat on the outside who can get past just about anybody. And even if he doesn't run past you, he's the type of player that can run a slant or a curl route. And all you got to do is miss one tackle and he's gone, as evident from his big game. But I think the biggest storyline for this one was more of the Buffalo offense and the way they played.
Yeah. We'll get into a couple coaching questions I have, otherwise I don't know. There's a ton to break down here, but I was just curious here. Now the first series when Kansas City drove down there, it was a 4th and 8. They decided to kick a 51-yard field goal. I don't have much, argument with that. Get points on the board, try to get up. And they did. They got up 9-0. But at the end of the half, they drove down there. I believe there was, 10 seconds left. It was on the 5-yard line. They decided to kick a field goal instead of going for it. And then I believe they got the ball back at the start of the second half. They drove down once again and decided to kick a field goal. And my only question to you is, this is where I sort of chuck analytics. I'm like, at what point do you start reading the game? And at no point did I think Buffalo was really going to get a stop. And I just thought kicking field goals, you were putting yourself behind the 8 ball there, because you're assuming that stop is coming. But I think if you read the game, if you're that Buffalo coach, you go, we aren't getting a stop today. We have to start getting touchdowns. And, I guess they remained connected to them if they, they did get the stop and got a touchdown. But I just thought they should have started going for broke, especially in an AFC championship game where you're on the road. I just feel you need to read that situation and be like, we aren't getting a stop today. Kansas City is humming. We're trying to stop Kelsey. We aren't stopping him. We're trying to stop Hill. We aren't stopping him. Mahomes is, moving well, so he's getting out of the pressure that we're getting on him. I just felt they went a little conservative going for those field goals instead of just trying to turn this thing into a shootout and be like, all right, if we lose 54-38. We lose 54-38. But, I guess maybe there is a point to, prolonging the game, staying at least attached. But I just felt right there at the end of the half and the start of the half, you should have just tried to turn this thing into a shootout.
Well, as you know, I had some obligations to take care of that night, so I had to sacrifice part of this game. Now, I will say when the game first started and Buffalo got up, I thought that this was probably one of those situations where, okay, maybe Patrick Mahomes is a little bit banged up still, and maybe they're going to change their game plan. But if they have to play from behind and with the hobbled Mahomes, I don't see how they can do this. And then that second quarter came around and Kansas City scored 21 points. And it was that moment that I knew Buffalo just can't keep up. And like you said, at some point you have to realize we're going up against one of the best offenses in the league, probably one of the better offenses over the last few years in the NFL. We just kind of have to, put our foot down, tell ourselves we're not going to get a stop. We got to get points. That's the only way we're going to stay in this game is we got to get points. I believe Allen threw for 2 touchdowns.
Yes, he had 2 touchdowns and 88 yards rushing. I thought Allen played pretty well. I thought he came out a little. I thought all of Buffalo probably they did get up, but they got up because Hardman fumbled the ball on the 1 yard line on a punt return. I thought they came out a little overjuiced and a little too amped up. By the third quarter, I thought they started to relax a little bit, but by that point, Kansas City was humming so much, it wouldn't have mattered how relaxed you were. Kansas City was scoring when they wanted to score.
I'll tell you what I think was the biggest Achilles heel for Buffalo in this game. And it's something that we talked about pretty much all season long. I know that they had a great season. They had a really good season. And this is not taking anything away from that. They had a really great statistical season. And they won a lot of games. They won their division. They got into the playoffs. They made it to the championship game. But I think their Achilles heel for this game was the same concern we've had all season long. And that was the lack of a running game. When your quarterback, as good as he's been, as good as he was, is your main source of yards on the ground, it takes away, this huge dynamic on your offense. When you have a quarterback like him that can get as many yards on the ground as he can, and you don't have a running back to complement him, it really limits what you can do, especially when, that defense is really well coached and they're probably prepared for what you're going to throw at them. I think that if they would have had a really solid running back, someone, that they could kind of hand the ball to and, kind of grind out some of these yards, maybe, some RPO type plays. I think it really would have helped them at least kind of throw that defense off balance a little bit and kind of, maybe get them scoring touchdowns as opposed to field goals, because I think that's what probably cost them the game was the fact that they settled for so many field goals. But this Kansas City team, man, it's just they're really, really potent, and I don't see this Super Bowl is going to be really hard for me to pick. And now I know we're not picking right now. We're saving that for a different show, but this is going to be one of the tougher ones to pick for me. I usually have a team that I'm kind of enamored with, or a team that is a feel-good story. And for me, on one side, I have a hard time picking one guy because he's so accomplished. And on the other side, I have a hard time picking them, even though they look like such a potent offense and probably the best quarterback in the league right now. It's just, I don't know. It's going to be really tough for me to pick, but for this particular game, I think that they were just overmatched, and I don't think that defensively they could have played much better than they did. You're going up against a really potent offense, like I said, in the Chiefs. This game was really just about the fact that they just couldn't keep up offensively.
Yeah. Couple things about the Buffalo running game. I really, honestly, the Zach Moss injury in that first round playoff game, I think ended up hurting him because he was starting to be able to be that sort of banger inside. Now, I just want to ask you a question about Devin Singletary. His rookie year was really good. It was not pretty this season, and essentially in this game, by the second half, he was benched and they were using TJ Yeldon, who essentially wasn't even on the roster before the playoffs started. He was sort of their reserve back in case, guys got COVID and had to miss time. What do you make of Devin Singletary's future here? I mean, I think both of us 2 years ago after his rookie year probably thought he was a solid back who, could handle it. And by this playoff game, I was like, he doesn't even need to be in the game. They do need to use Yeldon instead of him.
Yeah, I mean, I know that, he's not your prototypical back. I mean, he's a kind of a smaller back. To me, when I look at him, I see more of a scat back type of running back. I think that what Buffalo really needs is a bruiser, a pounder. What is he, 5'7", I think?
Yeah. But my problem with, he wasn't even doing, last year he was doing those scat back things. He was catching balls out of the backfield and, he was making that one cut and hitting a good play in the run game. And then all of a sudden, he wasn't catching passes this season as well. In this playoff game, he was totally worthless. I believe he dropped 2 balls. I thought he had a future, and now I'm like, they might need to upgrade here and find themselves another sort of slot back.
Well, you know what they say. There's always a bit of a sophomore slump. I think that probably played into it a little bit, but I think one of the reasons why he wasn't as successful this season was the fact that Josh Allen really came into his own when it came to kind of scrambling, getting out of the pocket and running the ball himself. Now, if you look at his runs, most of his runs were basically runs to the outside. As a quarterback, you obviously don't want to go straight down the middle. No point risking your health at that point. But Josh Allen was running more to the outside. His rushes tend to be more to the outside. Even when he escapes pressure and kind of scrambles out of the pocket, he's usually going to the outside, whether it's to the right or to the left. And when you have a scat back's not going to be the type of running back that's going to pound it straight down the middle, straight into the defensive line, into those D tackles. So I think it took away some of his lanes because you're covering those lanes for Allen. You're basically in turn covering those lanes, for Singletary. Like I said, if they had more of a bruiser, kind of obviously not everyone gets to have a Derrick Henry, but if you had a similar type of running back like Derrick Henry, where he has the ability to go to the outside as well as just kind of punch it inside in the trenches, I think that would have helped that team more. It would open up a lot more for the wide receivers, opens up more running lanes for the quarterback, and it still keeps the possibility of being able to pound it in if that defense opens up wide, trying to contain the quarterback. So I think that they probably have to go a different way, but he definitely is, I think, in my opinion, a good third down back. I think that he's a good complementary back. I don't know if he'd be a full-time running back for me.
Yeah. All right. So that's probably enough on that game. It was pretty much Kansas City dominating pretty much throughout. All right. So let's get to our best and worst of the week. What do you got for best of the week this week?
For best of the week, I'm going with obviously the man himself, not the greatest quarterback ever, not the greatest player ever, but the greatest quarterback in the NFL right now, and that's Patrick Mahomes. He was banged up last week. He toughed it out, and a lot of people were concerned about his neck injury / head injury. I was more concerned about his foot injury. I thought that if it hobbled him even a little bit, this was probably the Bills' game to win. Now, he came out and he looked really healthy, looked really good. He didn't get to run the ball a lot. He scrambled out, I believe, 5 times. I think he gained a total of 5 yards, so he didn't really run the ball a lot. But it seemed like he was planting his foot well, and there was a lot of strength when he was torquing his body to get some of those throws off. He has a very unorthodox style of throwing, and his foot and planting really affects it. And I think he looked really good, came out, played tough, and got the big wins. Now he's headed to the Super Bowl, and he's hoping to make it back-to-back. So he's my player of the week.
All right. My best of the week is actually the trifecta of the 3, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. I just, that was such a ridiculous combo. They played so well on Sunday. There was just nothing Buffalo could do. And when that team is humming like that, I don't know if anybody can beat them. So that was my best of the week. Kelce, Hill, Mahomes. All right. So what do you got for worst of the week?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to follow suit. I really like your pick for best of the week. So I'm going to kind of double up on that. I'm going to combo it up for my worst of the week. I'm going to go with, because I don't know what the actual play call was yet. I'm going to go with the defensive backs for the defensive secondary for the Green Bay Packers / coaching staff. And that's simply because I don't understand if the player thought he had help or if they just made a bad call on defense. But at that point in the game, when you're trying to claw your way back in, you've got the ability to go into the locker room down by 1 score, and then you give up a huge play. And it wasn't the first time, especially, I know that was the one they scored on, but there was a few plays prior to that where Brady threw some deep passes and the wide receivers just couldn't catch the ball, but they beat that secondary. So I'm going with the Green Bay secondary and / coaching staff.
All right. Well, I only have one, and it is Kevin King. He was the one who got beat deep, and we probably didn't mention it, but he was also one who got flagged for the pass interference at the
was he?
Yes, at the end of the game. So overall, it was not a great day for Kevin King. Just bad play overall. I mean, I'm sure he's aware of it. He has eyes and did make it to the Professional Football League. I'm sure he knows he probably shouldn't have let that guy behind him, but Kevin King, worst of the week. So that's our show for the week. That's going to be our only show for the week. Next week, we're going to return with 2 shows. We're going to bring in our man, Dynamite David, for a trifecta group, and we're going to do some prop bets, a whole lot of prop bets on the Super Bowl. That'll probably be on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then me and Achilles Rain will preview the Super Bowl game, and we'll try to find some bets to make other than just, I guess, the overall spread of the game, but we'll be back Friday to preview that game next week. So 2 shows next week. This is our only football time show this week. Be sure to follow all our podcasts on greenlightnetwork.org, Greenlight Network on Facebook, and Greenlight Network on YouTube. Be sure to follow our man Achilles Rain. Where can we follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at TD Achilles.
And I'm GLN Champ 5 on Twitter and Instagram. That's our show, and we're out.